So, hi, Serena. Thanks so much for coming to talk to me today about your latest research. So, your paper is introducing a new model looking at the bidirectional relationship between technology use and sleep. And I think that's something that's really interesting because we often obviously think about the impact technology has on sleep, but perhaps not the other way around. So firstly, perhaps you can just give us some of the hypotheses you've kind of mentioned in the paper relating to how technology use affects sleep and stuff.
Yeah, so we're kind of revising old models of technology use and sleep. So these models that were developed in 2010, so quite a few years ago, were mostly looking, as you mentioned, at why technology use impacts our sleep. And so they were discussing the bright light from the screens that might lead to arousal, the arousal hypothesis, looking more into the content that might be stimulating and then also causing arousal and impacting our sleep, but also nighttime disruptions. The fact that we have our phone on during the night might disrupt our sleep with notifications and messages coming through throughout the night. And finally, the sleep displacement hypothesis, which is simply the fact that we use technology instead of sleeping. So the time that we spend on there, it's time that we could have been sleeping instead.
Yeah, and it's really interesting from your paper, kind of reading obviously the evidence that's supporting these different hypotheses. And can you just quickly kind of highlight perhaps which of the theories perhaps has the best evidence for the impacts we're seeing?
Yeah, that's a great question because the best evidence, I would say that the bright light hypothesis and the arousal hypothesis have been studied the most with really well-designed studies in the lab, but even in home studies, but really experimental studies looking at these mechanisms. But we don't really see a big impact on sleep. So these studies in different contexts and with different kind of participants, they all kind of find consistently that the impact on sleep onset latency, so the time it takes to fall asleep, is about 10 minutes more if you use a bright screen versus a dim screen, or arousing content versus something that's calmer. So that doesn't seem to be the biggest impact. But the other two theories that I mentioned before, so the nighttime disruption and bedtime displacement, they show a more meaningful impact. So around an hour lost sleep when we have our notifications on, and also when using our technology beyond bedtime. So if you let participants decide when they go to bed, so use this technology, for example, video games, for as long as you like, and then seeing when they actually decide to go to bed, then they are delaying for 1 hour, about an hour. So that's a more meaningful impact. But the interesting thing here is also that there are individual differences. So for some people delay this much and other people do not. So it's not really one size fits all.
Yeah, that's interesting. I definitely relate to that. I've had to like ban my phone from my bedroom because I know that I will scroll sort of like far too long before I try and go to sleep if I have it nearby. Great. Okay, so then on the flip side, so this is something I'd not really sort of thought about particularly. It was really interesting again reading it in the paper, the potential impact sleep has on technology use. So can you give us a bit of a background on that as well?
Yeah, so this is not a new idea either. It's been studied since 2006, where with surveys asking participants, do you use technology as a sleep aid? And many people, about 60% of respondents say, yes, I do. And the people that use technology as a sleep aid, they are also the ones reporting more sleep problems. So shorter sleep duration, more sleep onset latency. So with these cross-sectional studies, it's kind of hard to know what comes first, but there are also longitudinal studies really demonstrating that technology use does predict later sleep problems, but sleep problems also predict more technology use over time. So it really seems to be going in both directions, and that's why we felt that we wanted to insert this opposite direction. And we also propose two different mechanisms that might be at play here. And one might be that if you have difficulties falling asleep, you might get bored, and just to fill up the time while waiting to fall asleep, you might be using your devices. But also this time, trying to fall asleep is also time that might be filled with worries and thoughts and thinking about the day that has been, things that you need to do the next day. And so it might be a way to regulate these negative emotions.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. It makes sense. So then what do you think is the implications for this, and that this sort of like bidirectional relationship, and where do we sort of take this?
Yeah, so partly just updating the knowledge, the fact that the bright light and the arousal don't seem to be the main reasons explaining why technology has an impact on our sleep, and also that sleep seems to be pretty resilient to what we do before bedtime. But when we use it after our bedtime, that's when we see the big impact. So I think that's pretty important, and it might also mean that we can do something about it. There are different strategies, like what you were mentioning. Some people might be able to keep their devices out of the bedroom, but for other people, that might be really hard. So we were talking about using technology as a sleep aid. And so for some people, it might be really hard. If we remove all technology, they might be left with a lot of worries, and that's not good for our sleep either. So studying more these kind of individual differences, I think in the future will be really, really helpful to figure out some more targeted interventions. And also, in the future, I think it will be really exciting to look more into this direction of effect that sleep problems might be leading to more technology use. So what if an intervention improves sleep onset latency? Is it so that we need to use technology less as well? And I think that's a really exciting thing to be
Yeah.
looking.
And I guess, and we've not really sort of touched on this too much, but like the type of use that's been sort of what's been used on phones, and the types of apps and content. And I think that would be interesting to look at as well, to
Yeah.
determine if it's more of a stimulating thing or a relaxing thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And also we're discussing a harm minimization approach. So really find the things that don't keep you up. So
Yeah.
you might be relaxed using music, but it might be too stimulating to look at YouTube because, it suggests more videos all the times, and that might be really hard to stop watching. So these kind of things might be really helpful. And of course, keeping it on flight mode so that it doesn't disturb during the night. And there are some things that we can do.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for discussing that with us. It's really interesting to sort of think about the whole range of implications and mechanisms that might be going on there. So yeah, thank you, and good luck with the rest of your research.
Thank you.
Thanks.